Greetings, Royals. It is Constance with QueenlyMe.com, your place for tips and inspiration on learning love and pursuing that purpose. If you are single, if you are dating, if you are in a relationship, Queenly Me has made it our mission to help you do it the right way. Okay? Another thing that's going to help you do it the right way is getting some knowledge. Okay? Readers are leaders. And today we are going to be talking about the book Waiting and Dating. Because she is waiting and she is definitely open to date. Hallelujah. We're going to do this book review a little bit differently than we have in the past because I just like to shake things up. And that's just what we're going to do. So I hope you enjoy it. If you want to know who Myles Munroe is, what he's all about, how he's changed in my life, baby, this man has changed my life. If you also want to know what I liked about the book, what I didn't, because there's actually is something that I didn't like about this book. That doesn't happen a lot, but there actually is. If you want to find that out, along with all the amazing reasons why you need to read this book, then you can click the link in the description box and go visit the blog. But right here, right now, what I want to do is share my favorite parts of the book. Y'all know I love this part. Y'all are going to get just a taste, and I'm telling you, this book is very similar to the Lord in that you will taste and see that it is good and you will want more. In Jesus' name. Yeah, so let's jump right on in. Healthy relationships should always begin at the spiritual and intellectual levels. The levels of purpose, motivation, interest, dreams, and personality. The physical dimension is the least important of the three, yet that's where we usually start. Physical attraction leads to deep emotional involvement, and the couple hasn't even had a chance to find out whether or not they share similar interests, dreams, or views on life. By the time those things come out and they begin to discover that they're not similar on levels spiritually and intellectually, it's too late because they're already emotionally entangled, making it extremely difficult to break off the relationship. Loneliness is a spiritual disease. Adam was alone because he was the only one of his kind, but he was completely fulfilled as a person. In tending the garden, he had meaningful work to do. Adam was so fulfilled within himself and so busy tending the garden and naming and caring for the birds and animals that he never felt the need or desire for a companion. This is called singleness, or being single. He was so preoccupied with doing what God had told him to do that he sensed no need for a mate. Apparently, the thought never entered his mind. Providing a mate for Adam was God's idea. Adam was completely self-fulfilled. He was ready for a mate when he did not need one. Anytime we start seeking people, we will be led by people. This is the dynamic balance that God wants us to see. Once we become preoccupied with someone or with seeking a particular person, we run the risk of losing God's direction. If we step off the road to the kingdom, whatever path we take will lead us backwards, so that whenever we do eventually make it back to the road, we'll likely be bruised and bleeding and farther away from our goal than when we began. But someone may object, if I don't go looking, I'm going to end up walking this whole road by myself. As we go along our way seeking the kingdom of God, all these other things that we're concerned about will be added, drawn to us like a magnet. We won't have to go looking for them. Whenever we follow God's principles, we receive God's provision and enjoy God's promises. One of the major problems we face today in our relationships is that so many people want God's results without following God's principles. They look for a godly return without making a godly investment. Everyone seeks success in their relationships, but many have little real interest in God's place in those relationships. It's completely unreasonable to ignore God's standards and still expect a godly outcome. There are no scriptural grounds to support the idea that there is one and only one Mr. or Mrs. Right for every person. Let's be honest, there are 6 billion people in the world. If there's only one person in 6 billion who's right for you, what's the likelihood that the two of you will meet up? Many married believers experience guilt over feeling attracted to people other than their mates. This sense of guilt is often due, at least in part, to the erroneous idea that there's only one right person for them to marry. In reality, there are any number of people who would be suitable. A difference in timing or circumstance could have resulted in their marrying someone else. Marrying one suitable person doesn't mean that all others vanish away. No matter how much we may love our mate, no matter how devoted we are to him or her, we will always meet others of the opposite sex who attract us. This is natural, normal, and inevitable. How we deal with that reality will determine whether we experience success or failure. That is why accurate knowledge is so important. Once we know that there are many suitable people we could marry and not just one, we will not be so surprised by the attraction we feel towards some. Even in the church, there are a lot of people doing some really spooky stuff in an attempt to find a spouse. Too many times I've heard someone say something like, "Last night while I was praying, I had a vision where the Lord told me that I'm going to marry John." Wherever that vision came from, it did not come from the Lord, and here's why. If God told this woman in a vision that she's supposed to marry John, then God has violated both her and his will. By telling her she is to marry John, God has violated her will to choose John as well as John's will to refuse. God created all of us with the freedom to choose, and he never violates that freedom. What this means for us is, like Adam and Eve, we're free to choose and therefore bear responsibility for our choices and their consequences. This is just as true in our relationships as anywhere else. God may bring a potential mate across our path, but he doesn't choose that person for us. We make that choice ourselves based on what we learned about that person and on the nature of the friendship that develops. It's certainly appropriate to ask God for wisdom in making our choice about a mate, but he will not choose for us. The choice is still ours. Choosing a life partner is not a matter of getting a magical sense or a supernatural revelation that this is the one. It is a matter of getting to know people who cross your path and evaluating them by the uncompromising standards you have established beforehand, recognizing always that you will find more than one person who meets those standards. That is what makes finding a life partner a choice in the truest sense of the word. Some believers start to panic if they reach a certain age and have not married and see no prospects in sight. Their fear drives them to lower their standards so that they jump at the first reasonable candidate who comes along and shows some interest. The question we should ask in discerning our life partner is, what is my life goal? Dating and marriage are directly related to God's purpose in and for our lives. We need to determine what we want out of life and then find out what the other person wants out of life to make sure that our life goals are in harmony with each other. If a believer marries an unbeliever, they will eventually have conflict because their life goals are not the same. Almost inevitably, a believer who desires to please God will find his or her goals frustrated by the unbelieving spouse. Whether unconsciously or deliberately, the unbelieving partner will try to pull the believing partner away from God. Tragically, I've seen this too many times. I've encountered many frustrated believers who really wanted to obey and follow God, but found their unbelieving mate dragging on them and holding them back. More often than not, the problem stemmed from their failure to sort out the issues of faith and life goals at the beginning. And just a little sidebar, I actually had a relationship like this where the guy I was dating was following some African religion that was not based around God whatsoever. And I mistakenly believed that because I understood where he was coming from, that automatically meant that I had to agree. Yes, there's a chance that you could influence them by your walk with Christ, but in my experience, your relationship with God isn't worth the risk that the reverse might actually happen. My relationship with him wasn't rooted and grounded on religion whatsoever, but my connection with him weakened my connection with God. And eventually, I wasn't tithing, I wasn't going to church, I was questioning if God even existed, and I just found myself in a bad place altogether. Take it from me. When you're ready for marriage, you will know it in an inner knowing that has no conflicts. If you apply the questions and principles discussed here in this book, you'll also know when you have found the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Marrying in the will of God carries no turmoil or uncertainty because it frees us to concentrate on Christ and His work without distraction. Otherwise, we'll stay spiritually immature. A wedding is an event, but marriage is a life. A wedding lasts only a brief time, but a marriage lasts until death do us part. Where is the wisdom in spending $500 on a wedding dress, $10,000 on a wedding, $5,000 on a reception, but not a single penny on books or counseling or any other resources on how to make a marriage work? An engagement devoted solely to planning for a 30-minute ceremony is wasted time. Much more important is time spent getting ready for the marriage, preparing for a lifetime with the person you have chosen who has chosen you. One definition of the word engage is to interlock with or to mesh together. And the word engagement means the state of being in gear. By the time the couple becomes engaged, their goals, objectives, dreams, desires, and values should interlock with each other and mesh together as one. And they should be in gear with each other as they move forward with their practical preparations to bring those things to pass. So again, if you want the rest of the book review, go ahead and click the link in the description box. I pray that this blessed you. I hope that you grab some nuggets of wisdom, and I also hope that you will go and grab this book of wisdom for yourself. This is probably something that I will read maybe once a year as long as I'm still single, because as soon as I meet my match, I'm going to gift this to one really lucky person, and it's going to have all my notes in it. If you are not subscribed, I hope that you will tap that big red button down there and subscribe, and that you will also like, comment, and share. And I will see you same place next time. Bye. Oh, also, if you want 20 questions to ask the person that you are dating so that you can figure out so much more about them in a very fun and light way, go ahead and subscribe to my blog at queenme.com/subscribe.